Hi, and good afternoon. Welcome to our Voltimum Roundtable discussion on smart technologies. We have a cracking team for the debate. We have Richard Hayward, who's the Sales Director for User Interface Business at Legrand. We have Gary Barnett, who's the Systems and Controls Product Manager for Signify. And we have Nico Fundamave, the Home and Distribution VP for Schneider. So welcome all of you, and thanks for coming along. Hopefully this will be an engaging discussion. So, I mean, everything around us at the moment seems to be termed as smart. And it's quite clear that people are now more aware of the world of smart devices through the homes and buildings, through the introductions of smart speakers, video doorbells, etc. But commercially, these sorts of technologies, the smart tech has been around in the forms of BACs and BEMS, etc., etc. So are people just seeing the tip of the iceberg for smart technologies? What should a consumer expect from the realm of smart building? Sorry, I'll just stop. This disappeared before. So what should consumers expect from the realms of smart buildings? Is it simply gimmickry, or are there genuine advantages for the user and the contractor going forward? If we take the view from the contractor, what would you guys say is on the horizon, and what can they be getting involved in now? If I pitch this to Richard, would you like to kick off?
Okay, yes, certainly. Thanks, Luke. Well, if let's say I can start off from a residential perspective, then I'd certainly say that the main opportunity from the contractor is actually a business opportunity. It's a revenue stream, because what we have with smart technology, or smart home, shall we say, is that we're now moving into it being an established market. If we look at 5-10 years ago, maybe even probably up to about 2 years, we've got an emerging market, and that emerging market of smart tech was consumer products. So you mentioned the consumer. What can the consumer expect? And people thought of smart technology, and they thought of smart technology as being gadgets that they buy. They're consumer products. They maybe buy them from Amazon, or et cetera, and they just plug them in and they connect their phone to them. And from that perspective, what's the opportunity for the contractor, for our industry? But for me, very similar to the smart technology that was in cars, shall we say 20 to 10 years ago, where again, smart technology in cars was a consumer product. We'd buy them separately to our car. We would fit them ourselves. Smart technology, whether it's a sat nav, whether it's a media player, etc. But once the industry is mature, then these systems are now part of our building or part of our car. And in an emerging market, it's a consumer product, it's an add-on. In a mature market, those systems become part of our buildings, the same as they have now become part of our car. I can't buy a car that's not a connected car. I just can't buy one, okay? And we are seeing that in our homes, and soon you won't be able to buy a home that's not connected. Of course, you'll be able to connect your phone to your lights. Of course, you'll be able to talk to Alexa and it will turn your heating down. And that's wonderful, because once it becomes an established market and it's part of the buildings that we live in, then those things need to be installed. And if they need to be installed, we need a contractor. The contractor needs to buy it from a professional distributor. And that's a real opportunity for our industry. Smart tech isn't just about a consumer product that somebody buys and plugs in. That's my opening gambit. It's just a wonderful business opportunity.
Fantastic. Gary, after you.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've seen is, for example, in the house, the smart lighting, for example, because it was going into the house, we had to make it easy to install and easy to set up and easy to commission, if you like, as a high street user. So somebody that would go into John Lewis or Argos or their local DIY shop and buy it, it wasn't actually installed by a contractor. So what we've had to do is we've had to make all these smart control systems easier to install and easier to set up. And then what we've done is, once we've got that simple to install technology in the home, we then push that back to the sort of office and commercial environment. So now contractors can buy our intelligent lights, our intelligent controls, etc., and actually set them up themselves on their smartphone, the same as you would your smart controls in a house. So actually now, instead of having to pay for the historically expensive commissioning engineers in the building, a contractor, an electrician, an installer can do that. Simply install it, power it, commission it on your phone. So to me, that's one advantage for the contractor. But smart homes and smart controls, that technology is being pushed back to the bigger market.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because often you see things filter down. It's good to see that it's a twofold direction. And I guess through your companies, you take on board the issues that contractors have had in the past of the commissioning side of things, which tends to dissuade contractors from taking up and offering technologies. So by addressing that and making it easier for them to configure, etc. I guess connectivity has been a big part of this. But Nico, what's your view with this?
It's I mean, it's a great answers and input, by the way, from Richard and Gary. But I think if I can add a little bit onto that, and it's almost like you need to rewind the clock a little bit. If we think 20 years ago or 25 years ago, the industry that was the sort of hip and happening space was IT, right? Everybody thought that, that's the place to aspire to, the IT industry, the internet and the Internet of Things. And I think what we need to realize, or at least what we are seeing, is that the future world is going to be electric. And we all know that if we don't go electric in whatever segment, residential buildings, particularly residential in the UK, with electrification of gas and the electrification of transport, that's going to mean a lot. It's going to mean a lot to our industry, and it's going to mean a lot for manufacturers like us, but installers, distributors, the whole industry is going to feed off it. And I think that's going to bring a lot of opportunity. It's going to bring opportunity for people installing and contractors to not only capitalize on this increased market, because now the electric market is becoming the darling, aspiring industry to be in. It's the new it. And if you take that with the emergence of digital and how the two topics start dovetailing, and exactly like Richard and Gary says, how do you make it simple? How do you make it not just being a gadget, but something that actually brings real life value? It reduces your bill. That's valuable. And we see that typically consumers will not bring that. The consumer is not going to be the person that will install the car charger, the battery backup, the solar, the lighting, and because it's dangerous, right? So it will be the contractors that we need on this topic for sure.
Well, that's it, and we really need to dissuade end users from trying to get involved with domestic electrics, because that's where issues happen. And that's where you do need to be a competent electrician to do these things. But I think a lot of the points that you've touched upon there do lead me into the next question. We can come back onto some of the aspects of question one in a sec. But the next question I was going to pose was that the race to net zero carbon is fully going on. We've got clear commitment from nearly all governments. Well, you mentioned that some of the benefits that the smart buildings can help in achieving this. And you've touched on the fact of the generation and storage. So starting to explore the energy prosumer concept. So how easy is it for all these things to interact? And the smart buildings, all these products that your companies can offer, how do they play into this prosumer side of things? How do they help to create the energy efficiencies? What are the advantages okay for the end user ultimately, and I guess the advantages for the contractor are the increased amounts of work. But yeah, if you could expand upon that. If I field that to Gary first of all.
Okay, I mean, I'll answer then from a lighting point of view, and it's a straightforward answer. You know, at Signify, we've always been motivated to deliver the right light at the right time. Now, if by adding controls to that, so occupancy sensors, light sensors, etc., we can actually lower that amount of light level or turn that light off automatically and save energy that way, then that's a quick win. So you walk into a room, for example, whether that's an office, a warehouse, or whether it's your bathroom at home, the light comes on automatically. It's health and safety, if you like. It gives the consumer what they want. It gives you the right light. But when you leave, you don't leave it on. It turns off automatically. To me, that's a win-win for everyone. And obviously, the people installing and commissioning those systems, whether that's the contractor or the user, are going to reap the benefit of the additional work.
Fantastic. Either of you two have anything to add on this?
Yes, certainly. I think from my point of view, the answer is that smart technology and us as an industry can certainly help towards net zero. That's the thing. We can help. We're not going to have the whole answer, but we can certainly help. And I think for me, if we look at and Gary sort of mentions the first part of automation there, you know, in the commercial environment, is that somebody leaves a meeting room and they don't turn the light off. Okay, which they could turn the light off when they leave, but they don't. So automatically, it turns off for them, and that's something I think we also have an opportunity with residential. You know what Nico mentioned earlier with regards to our car charging, our solar, etc., etc. These things that are now built into our homes to make us almost become maybe some energy self-sufficient. But what we can also do with a smart home is the smart home can potentially become autonomous. So for years now, we've had smart meters, and smart meters are wonderful, and we can read the smart meter. But to be quite frank, I can remember reading a smart meter sort of more than 45 years ago at my nan's old house, when I could actually watch the old clock going round and see how much energy she was using. And sometimes it would go faster and sometimes it would go slower. And to be honest, the issue that we've got with smart meters is that the danger is that we look at the energy we're using, but it doesn't particularly change our habits. We sort of shrug our shoulders and go, we're using a bit more energy, right? It's not the end of the world. Lights aren't going off. They're still working. But what a smart home can do is that it can take that decision away from us, or we can tell it to decide for us. So when you are using a certain amount of energy, do something. Turn my lights off, dim my lights, reduce my heating. I don't want to use this much electricity and energy, so make me use less, okay? Because actually, when I'm watching the telly or I'm having a meal and I realise I'm using too much electricity, am I going to stop there, then and there, and change? Probably not. So for me, the smart home can become autonomous, and it can make those decisions, or it can deliver those actions for us that quite often in our daily lives we are perhaps a little bit too lazy to do. And that's how we can help with controls. We can become autonomous. We can decide. The home can decide for us instead of us going, I'm using a little bit too much energy.
And I guess
that's how I think we can help. Thanks
for that, Richard. I think people are now getting used to more AI devices, and you've got the assistants on your phone and in your speakers, etc. as well. Mm-hmm. But like you're saying, being able to use these for important things that people won't get involved in. That I guess there's been quite a negative perception with smart meters. The lengthy duration of the rollout, the massively high costs, the issues with SMETS 1, etc., etc. So there was a lack of confidence piece there, but that's pretty much been addressed. Okay, we've still got X amount of million homes still to do, but they're getting there. So once you've got the mass rollout, I guess you can then start to tie that in with the electrification of buildings and electrification of heating and transport. So the smart devices can then start to look at the load control, start to mitigate against some of the negativity. Oh, we're going to breach the maximum demands of the grid. You're not really, are you? So if you've got load control, you can then balance everything out. Is this how you perceive some of this going forward?
I think you mentioned a very good example there, hi Luke, of SMETS 1 and SMETS 1 and SMETS 2. And I almost, in my mind, I almost want to take it back to the buildings domain or even the manufacturing domain, standard protocols, Gary and them all know everything about DALI and lighting. There was a standard and everybody went to that standard. Things were formed over many, many decades in the buildings environment and in the manufacturing environment around protocols and how things spoke to each other. But in the home, it's a lot more disparate is maybe the right way to put it. And things, whether we like it or not, are forming. And they're forming very quickly. And I think a lot of companies, let's take the smart meter rollout, SMETS 1, SMETS 2, it's an evolution. We recognized that there was a rollout and then we discovered, but that's not going to give us enough of what we actually need. And we will see that in technology, whether that's car charging, battery, lighting, smart devices, that it will keep on evolving. And I think what we see as a company particularly is that it needs to be open. And it needs to be open because there's not one system out there that's going to be, I am the sole benefactor of this home. It needs to interact with other systems. It needs to be easy. Interoperable is the fancy words we use always, but it needs to be easy, like a click and think, like we do in our everyday life. So we see that happening quite a lot now, and we also see, and it would be quite arrogant if a company like ours, like Schneider Electric, to say we've got the answer. It's really the industry working together and partnering together to come up with the solutions to evolve the topic towards net zero home and make it easier. And we see that, and that's why we work together with partners to come up with solutions and test it. Make as few mistakes as we possibly can, but coming up with the answers. And I think again in the UK particularly, we are leading the space from a global perspective. There's a lot of startups, there's a lot of technology development in this space because the government making such a strong stance on the matter. So it's really a fascinating place.
That's really interesting that you mentioned that the UK is taking the lead on that. That's had a lot of reassurance to investment and contractors, etc., doing the works over here. You mentioned on that you think key is the connectivity side of things and the compatibility between the manufacturers, etc. So we're not likely to see a Betamax VHS kind of thing going forward, where you get one home stuck on one thing and they can migrate to these other systems. The interaction and the play nicely-ness within the manufacturers is quite key. Is that the same perception for Signify and Legrand?
To use an example that Nico just touched on, a couple of buildings that we're doing at the moment, we're doing complete connected wireless lighting. And on the BMS side, we're talking to the Schneider system. So we're using an open protocol, which in this case happens to be BACnet, to talk to the fan coil controllers, etc., etc. So what Nico was getting at is no one company can solve it all, but we can work together via open standards, open protocols, even sort of working hand by hand to say, well, we solve the lighting side if you solve that side. There needs to be some interaction if we're going to get the complete solution. So we work with people like Schneider and others all the time, because we're not the one-stop shop for either the home or the complete building.
That's got to add reassurance to the end user as well, isn't it? That they're not going to get locked into an ecosystem which could become costly further down the line. Richard?
Yes, certainly. I completely agree with both Nico and Gary there. And I think just one of the things I'd probably like to add to this is that if we take it back to our industry, we manufacture products that are part of the built environment. So for many years now, as we've started to build manufacture functional products, and all of a sudden we've then started to manufacture systems. For many years now, we've been aware that our lighting system, for example, as Gary has mentioned, actually needs to be able to speak to and be interoperable with the BMS system. And we as manufacturers may well speak our own language. Let's say, for example, you might say with Legrand, you might be using SCS protocol, that's one language. Clipsal may be using CBus, which is another language, but there's different. That doesn't matter. All our products talk nicely using SCS. Let's say, for example, we're speaking Flemish, okay, and Schneider they're speaking Finnish, and we're all talking within each other quite nicely. And we can decide we can operate a number of ways, okay. We can either develop a driver between us, and which is like an interpreter, and we can talk to each other. We've been doing that for many years. Or, as Gary mentioned, we can decide to both talk in a language that we understand, BACnet, or if you're a Finn or you're from Belgium, you both decide to speak to each other in English, right? So you can understand. And this is something that, as manufacturers within our industry, we've had to realize that this is how we need to be, because we are not the only manufacturer within a project. What we need to do is, and we're starting to see the consumer large tech giants, the likes of Amazon, Apple, etc., Samsung, Sony, whereas previously the consumer devices, they wanted to hook you into their ecosystem. So you are only ever going to buy that one type of product from that one manufacturer. I think what we're seeing now is that as they then want to move into the residential space, they don't just want to talk to the coffee machine and talk to the washing machine and talk to the fridge. They also want to talk to the home. And if they're going to talk to the home, then they've got to be open as well, because the one home might be a Legrand system, the next home might be a Schneider system, Philips, etc. And I think that's the holy grail, is that the consumer giants will realize that they need to play nicely as well, just like we were forced to. We obviously wanted to as well, but we were forced to survive. We've always had to talk to each other. And I certainly hope that the tech giants see that that's the way forward as well.
Of course.
See that? Sorry, carry on.
One thing I thought of is one of the open standards, if you like, but is connecting us all, of course, is the cloud, is the internet. Because if you take all these connected systems, the one thing they have got in common is the internet and is the cloud. So now, rather than an interface that we used to have to convert DALI to DMX or one protocol to the other, now all of a sudden, of course, the internet is the converter. And as long as your house or building is connected to the internet via APIs and etc., there is up there in the cloud via the internet an exchange of information that can be from protocol to protocol without any physical hardware, of course.
So that's really interesting. So whereas in the past you had to perhaps use dongles and converter systems to do the communication, the cloud is now effectively acting like a Babel fish, to nick a phrase from Douglas Adams. So things are becoming a lot easier. Not just plug and play, but plug, communicate, play. Nice. Fantastic. Anything else to oh, actually, yeah, I was going to say on you know what? I've forgotten what I wrote down there. So yeah, unless there's anything else to expand on this, I'm sure there may be some back to
I think if I add something there, and this is a discussion, and it's fascinating because a lot of people, whether you are a home builder or a contractor or an electrician or even a home owner, I think most people, owning a home is probably one of your biggest assets that you will ever have, and probably one of your longest assets that you will ever have. And now, look at us all, probably the place where you'll spend most of your time with. So, it's a big financial decision, it's a long financial decision, and there's a comfort element to it as well. We all feel quite private in our own homes. And when people come to us and ask us, where do I start? What do I do? Do I slap PV on the roof, or do I just change my lighting? Well, where do I start if I want to embark on the net zero journey? And it's not an easy answer, because the right answer, hey Gary Richard, is always, well, it depends. It depends where you are. It depends on your home. But I think very often where we get to is, go with a partner you can trust, whether that's your local installer, whether that is the home builder, whether that is the manufacturer brand that you can trust. But go with things that you can trust. And what we normally say to people is, go with somebody that will be here in 10 years' time, because you're going to have that asset probably for longer. So you don't want to embark on this journey and then paint yourself into a corner just to realize, oh man, what I did, I can't take it a step further. So I think you pick your partners, and the partners that that will be here for the next 10, 20 years to go to help you solve your particular domain in your house. And I think that's where, again, the opinion leaders of that is the contractor and electrician fraternity, because people will ask them for the answers.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's where these sorts of discussions are really good, because we've moved beyond the early adopter phase for this sort of stuff now. We're starting to move more into mainstream, but there's still a lot of confusion out there for contractors, and so it's really important for them to follow the outputs from companies like yourselves and discussion points, etc., and publications like from the IET and other kind of groups out there, just to give them confidence and focus on what's going on out there. And also there's lots of forums where the contractors can share experiences, and then that also drives the confidence, so people know that, okay, what they're installing is good. I mean, you guys, your companies have been around for a long time, so you're well vested in here. People have confidence that you're going to be around in 15, 20 years time, etc. And the last thing contractors want to do is install something that isn't supported in a couple of years time, because in a couple of years time there's likely to be problems, and they'll be the ones who get the phone call from the disgruntled user. So it's that's really good to point out there, I think. I was going to just go back to something Gary mentioned earlier on. So as well as the benefits of energy saving, etc., being able to control and deliver the right sort of light, that has lots of health benefits as well. So I guess commercially start to address some of that, and domestically as well, having the right kind of frequencies of light, the right intensities of light can be controlled in this method as well. I know they're developing a pass on health and well-being, so I guess some of the products that you guys are offering starts to feed into that side of things, which is possibly overlooked by many people. Would you say that was correct?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, health and well-being and lighting go hand in hand. I mean, we all know on a drab, grey day, we feel a bit dismotivated and depressed even. You go out for a walk in the sun and look up at the blue sky, and all of a sudden you feel energized and all the rest of it. That's purely a lighting thing. That's the way the human body responds to different wavelengths of light. So to put that back in a home, and even me personally, I've got a wake up light in the in the room, and I like to be woken up gently. So instead of a light just coming on at full beam, I get woken up in a dawn simulation, if you like. And then at a night time, my preference is to have a dusk simulation, because that's the sort of biorhythm that my body's actually used to. But other than that, of course, you know, when you're plugging in and you're watching a DVD or you're playing a game, to have your TV with all the surround LEDs and that lighting up in sync with the theme of a movie or the theme of a game is, again, not brilliant for energy saving, because obviously you're using light for visual pleasure rather than necessity. But again, it makes you feel better. And actually, if we all lived in dark caves, we'd be all a lot more miserable. So having the right light amount and color is very important. And of course, one of the things that we do a lot in hospitals and stuff like that is we actually cycle the color of the light to the patients, and it actually increases, should I say decreases, their recovery time. Again, as the same, we've done studies on schools where a different color of light and a different level of light have improved the learning abilities of the children. So I won't hog the question, but there is a lot we can do with light.
That's it. I think it moves beyond the expectations. Like you say, I mean, it's using additional lighting for entertainment, but obviously it's very efficient LED lighting in these products. So yeah. I guess the energy consumption is minimal with that. Any expansion on that, anyone?
Yeah, I think from just to add on that, I think what you've got with their key drivers into the adoption of technology, and what Gary's really referring to here is that within the commercial aspect, there's a drive and very much a push towards energy efficiency, cost saving. You know, put these systems within your buildings to save you money, to reduce energy from a commercial aspect. But obviously there's a cost to that. When you then introduce the human-centric lighting element and well-being into that cost equation, obviously the outcome of what you're experiencing in terms of not only saving you money, but also your employees, etc., are being more efficient because they're healthier, etc., then all of a sudden your cost versus benefit is greatly improved. And one of the things that we see within Legrand is that's also true in the residential space. And I mean, I very much learned this perhaps about 5 years ago when we acquired two companies that worked in the assisted living space with Time Tech and AidCall, is that actually within that space of assisted living, you've got a section of our industry, and the adoption of technology in the real world, not just in the virtual world, is actually quite wonderful. Really, really fantastic health benefits with products being installed in people's homes that make them safer, that allow us to monitor them. So not only when somebody falls over, for example, that somebody can go and help them, etc., because they know that they've fallen, but also technology that monitors our movement within the house. Is that movement within the house what we would expect from them? And if it's not, then their health advisors and carers can actually intervene before they fall over, before the ambulance is called, before they have to go to hospital. So all of a sudden, the health benefits there are really quite vast. So within our home, we're going to install technology in our home, not only for us to feel better because we want it, not only because that's going to save us energy, but also there's a wonderful well-being effect both in the home as well as at work. And I think one of the key opportunities for our contractors here is that type of performance that the home can have doesn't have to be in an institution. It doesn't have to be monitored by a call center. So we can now have ambient assisted living where we can have sensors that turn our lights on at 50% at 3 o'clock in the morning when we wake up to go to the toilet, so we don't fall over, so the ambulance doesn't have to come, so we don't go to hospital. And likewise, Likewise, let's say, for example, our homes can send a push notification not only to the call centre, but to our loved ones and our friends and family. So from a well-being point of view, we know that our parents maybe don't need to be in a setting that's got monitored living, but we can have the home to say they've gone to bed, all the lights are off. So we can have push notifications for our well-being and also for theirs.
See, that's really important. So there's some huge social benefits to be had from. I guess they were probably unexpected benefits from the smart systems. I seem to remember hearing that it was when these things were starting to be rolled out, one of the big adopters was the healthcare kind of sector for these very reasons. And it started to almost run away with itself, because you can now allow people to remain in their homes longer, less of a national burden on the NHS. And also the fact that people are going to be more comfortable and happier living within their homes. You've got inobtrusive monitoring, like you said, so people don't feel like they've got CCTV watching them the whole time. They're passively being kind of looked after. So there's some massive benefits all round for these things. So it's really reassuring to see that has led to a swift uptake in these markets.
And also within home environment, even voice control and gesturing control, so that people who may struggle to touch something to make an activation, just by voice control now they can more easily turn their heating down by, talking to the Tatmo smart thermostat or whatever it may be. But then also in a commercial environment, if you think about the challenges we're facing at the moment with COVID, that technology now means that we can have activation of spaces without having to touch a light switch with the sensors that Gary was talking about, etc. And again, this is very important to us with the challenges that we currently face in a commercial environment or a public environment, that our environment can act automatically rather than us having to touch various devices that perhaps we may not want to just at this point in 2020.
It's amazing the opportunities that COVID is exposing us to, I guess, for want of a better word.
I think what it has done actually is it's a realization to how we're working, how we're living, and probably to technologies that we were adopting. It's making us look towards adopting them faster than what perhaps we were.
I think so. Anyone else have anything else to add on the healthcare benefits?
I think it's exactly like Richard and Gary mentioned. Technology is great, right? We all love it, but if it doesn't make your life, if it doesn't bring a difference, it's pretty useless.
What's the point?
And with technology, and we see it, it's typically, particularly in commercial buildings, but also in residential. We've spoken a bit, Luke, about sustainability and net zero, and we know that technology will enable us do that better than ever before. I think something that a lot of people don't speak about is as it becomes more electric, and we've got contractors on the line here, what are we going to talk about when we talk about resiliency, safety, fire safety, infrastructure safety? I think that's a topic that's not out there in the media maybe as much as it should be. But we can maybe discuss that. We've spoken a bit about hyper efficiency systems, speaking to systems, but I fully agree with Richard and Gary that with all of this stuff, it's becoming actually a little bit more people centric. It's not just technology for the sake of technology. It's to make life safer and make it healthier, like Richard said, and also make it more comfortable. And that's value. that's value for somebody that, you know, like Richard said, when they fall at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, that, you know, how do you prevent that? That's real value for somebody. And that's what we are starting to see, that the systems are becoming people-centric, and how they make that safer, more comfortable, and healthier for the people occupying, whether it's a building or a residential home. Yeah.
That's it. I think there's it's just such a vast smart technology can offer such a vast amount of opportunities. It seems to interact with everything in our lives, and all the things that are going to come as well. You mentioned there that it can start to be used for looking at resilience, and also an obvious one which we haven't even discussed is the interaction with fire and security. I mean, this essentially some of the basis of when people started putting these sorts of technology into buildings, etc., etc. So you start to combine all these different aspects into an easily accessible, easily adjustable ecosystem, a non-company specific ecosystem that the users can interact with. So it is very, very, very far-reaching. I just seen a question come through which says, would we not have more waves causing interference with this? Which kind of links into a question I was going to pose as well. With the smart technologies, wired or wireless? I mean, people are using lots of these plug and play bits and pieces, just connects to your Wi-Fi. Okay, that's pretty easy, but people do change their routers every 18 months. It's a bit of a faff having to change these. It's getting easier. But do you see wired systems being more useful commercially and domestically? And is PoE roadmapped on any of your devices, or is that too late to the party?
Okay, I'll jump in on that one. If we start with PoE, now actually let's start with wired versus wireless. Realistically, the best data transmission you're going to get is via a wire. So if you're sat at home and you want to download a big file from your laptop, you're better off connecting it hardwired to your router than doing it wirelessly. So there are speed advantages with hardwired, yeah, but obviously it's all about convenience. So for me, wireless is slower, but it hasn't got any wires. So when that goes into lighting, for example, we at Signify, we do PoE, we do all forms of wiring and wireless systems. But what we're seeing is our most technologically advanced system is our PoE system. We're still developing it. You can connect and power lights just by plugging in an Ethernet Cat5, Cat6 cable. But the infrastructure is wired. It's faster, more powerful. We can do more clever things with it. But it's not such a lean architecture as a wireless system. Because with a wireless system, you've got no data highways to wire. So you just power the light fitting or the light switch or a sensor and let it run wirelessly on its own. All it needs is its power, and off it goes. So what we're seeing is actually technically the best and most advanced systems are still wired, because, you know, wire is quicker, wire is more power. However, the biggest uptake is with wireless, because everybody, whether it's a doorbell or whether it's you know, a speaker, whatever system it is, people want wireless nowadays, purely for the for the speed of installation and the fact that you've got no wires. So that would be my my input on it.
Okay, thanks, Gary. How do you guys feel on this?
I think, you know, if I can also maybe just give our view, it's going to be both, right? It's I don't think it's a war, the one against the other. It depends. For all the reasons Gary said, you know, your resilience in wired is known and it's constant. When we see now typically, I don't know if we're going to spend about demand side response type of actions. So I'm careful not to go down there. But you know, if you need to shed load, or you need to shift load from an infrastructure perspective, grid, community level, you're going to struggle to get away from wired data solutions. And I think maybe more to pose the topic is that similar to what we all experienced with COVID, Netflix, data consumption, what that has done. We need to accept that the buildings of the future, the homes of the future, are going to produce an enormous amount of data.
Mm-hmm.
And that data is going to be transported. And that transportation infrastructure is going to be wired and wireless. And it's going to be 10-fold, 20-fold, 100-fold the amount of data at quicker intervals than what it has today. And I think that's something to recognize. So I think it's a dangerous way to say, is it wired or wireless? It's going to be both. We've got 5G as well coming on top of that. So it's an interesting evolving topic for us as well. Richard, what do you think?
Completely agree. It's both. It's absolutely both, and it's not a fight. It's a combination of both wired and wireless within your home or within your office environment. It's absolutely got to be both. And when we look at bandwidth, then think about the bandwidth that we're using here at the moment with video. And Nico, you mentioned Netflix. If we look at our industry, then we're talking about smart devices, let's say in the home, and we're talking about potentially having wireless control of a thermostat or maybe of a light. And the amount of data that we're transferring wirelessly between the thermostat or between the light switch and our control device is virtually nothing compared to, let's say, for example, your son that's streaming Netflix in one room and your daughter that's playing a video game in another and your wife that's watching 4K movie in another room, right? So, that's the bandwidth that our digital infrastructure in terms of connectivity is having to cope with. So if we look at the smart technology that we're adding onto that bandwidth, it's virtually nothing. And from that point of view, that's why I say wired versus wireless. It's both. Mm-hmm. What I would also say is that perhaps more importantly going into the future, and it's something that Gary mentioned with the cloud, is intelligence and interoperability and algorithms that happen both cloud side and land side. And for me, that also has to be both as well, because if too much of your intelligence happens in the cloud, when the cloud stops, then your building stops. So you need to make sure that the majority of the functions within your home or your office, etc., if the cloud does stop for whatever reason, the main functionality that we expect as a user still functions, and the cloud is giving you an additional benefit that you like when you've got it, but if you haven't got it, you don't feel that it's too detrimental. And I think that's important as well. And that's still both. There's still a both there, but the cloud technology and smart interoperability versus the local interoperability and intelligence, I think is the next conversation that we have, rather than wired versus wireless.
We fully subscribe to that philosophy as well, Richard, because I don't know how anybody else is, but when my wife cannot enter the door because there's not a cloud-to-cloud peering, it's not going to be pretty. So, and again, in an office environment, you're a lot more forgiving than in a residential at your home. For if something doesn't work immediately, it's a problem.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're absolutely right, both of you. And in lighting terms, it's simple. The lights must work no matter what. So when you walk into that building or press that switch, cloud or no cloud, the lights need to work. if you want to see how many people are in the building or how much energy you've used this week, yes, that's stored in the cloud. And if you can't get your hands on it, it's not the end of the world. But you walk in and your basic controls, your basic functions need to be there. The cloud is just the nice to have, isn't it?
Yeah.
I guess you got to have the baseline functionality always accessible, and then, like you say, the cream on the cake just with the cloud, just for the fluffy and enhanced kind of things as well. These kind of sorry to jump in here, but I was going to say, I guess it's dependent on the type of buildings as well. You're getting lots of modern constructed homes, especially NZEBs, etc., with foil-backed Celotex, etc. You're going to really struggle running wireless in some of these buildings because you've essentially got lots of little Faraday cages. So I guess there is unique cases for wired solutions as well. I know you can get these meshed systems, but so then you've got multiple. Well, you have literally got both systems, haven't you, in play?
Yeah.
I've got another question that's come through, just saying relate to wireless. I don't know if you guys are aware of any of if this is being baked into equipment at the moment, but can we envisage when equipment will switch automatically between 2.4 and 5 gigahertz? I personally didn't know this was an issue, but
I don't know. I'll say outright.
No, I mean, we use 2.4 gigahertz, but we don't use the 5 gigahertz. I'm not sure why it is an issue, but all I do know is that we use 2.4 gigahertz, and what we do is if there is a problem or we detect a problem, we frequency shift within bands within that frequency range. But we certainly don't hop over to 5 gigs. Although I think is that related to Wi-Fi more? I think
that'll be to do with Wi-Fi. I think one gives a faster connection but a shorter distance, and the other one's the inverse.
Yeah, the 5 gig is a faster but shorter one. But that's Wi-Fi, not our wireless systems. Which I was talking primarily Bluetooth and Zigbee there, which are locked on at 2.4.
Mm-hmm.
So just to pick on that, Luke, from our point of view, if we look at the 5G versus the 2.4, and you mentioned one's a lot faster, but the other one gives you a much wider coverage. As I mentioned, let's say, for example, with our products, the amount of data that you're sending is really small packets of data. So from our point of view, it's much more important that you have a much wider coverage within the property than how quick that data is getting there. But also, I do believe that products that operate in sort of the more data transfer rich environments, that they quite often will switch and search for whether or not they're better in 5G or 2.4.
Okay,
but we feel that we don't need to at this point in time. Whether that changes in the future, it may well.
Like you say, they're such small, these data packets. I remember reading, I can't remember the name of this. Was it LoRaWAN or something like that? It's a real wideband. It can communicate over kilometers. Tiny data packets. Real minimal energy usage. I forgot. I remember reading up on it, being quite excited ages ago. I get excited about the weirdest thing. That was using that sort of system. So tiny data packets, but can emit for a massive range. But this kind of links onto my last question. Often you get people querying the security of these devices. Is that a warranted concern? I mean, you hear about hacking, airlines getting hacked, banks getting hacked. But in reality, what do they do with any of these systems? And is the security an issue?
Well, I mean, I guess that depends on the manufacturer to some degree. Anything that's connected to the cloud or connected to the internet, it is a risk because obviously it can happen, and that's why we have security and cyberspace experts on board. So, I mean, from our point of view, because we operate in all sectors, we might be, for example, putting a system into a house one day, or the next day it might be a government or bank building. So therefore, our products, our security systems are developed to the highest levels to support and protect the banks and governments. And then that technology that we've already paid to develop is then pushed down into the house. So effectively, your home user gets the same level of encryption and security as a bank or government building would, just because once you've developed it once, why develop it again? But in essence and broadly speaking, if you're sat at home playing with an app for one of your smart controls, whether that's heating or lighting or whatever, in effect, you've probably got the same level of security as you would if you were sat there on your Lloyds Bank app making a transfer on your mobile phone. So, that's a comparable level. So if you feel safe using a banking app on your phone, you should feel safe using an app to control your lights or your heating or your smart camera.
That's reassuring. I guess that's going to be.
Sorry, Luke, I don't know. We didn't get that.
Oh, sorry. There seems to be an echo come through there as well. I was just saying that should really give confidence through to the end user and also contractors as well, that you do have these. It is just as secure as the banking for your products, etc., etc. What's your view on that, Nico?
I think again it sort of comes back to that branding conversation we had earlier. I mean, you've got Legrand, Signify, and Schneider Electric. We are all very responsible, publicly listed companies, and all of us take cybersecurity extremely serious, because of the risk that it imposes, the risk on financial goods, life even, and I mean that's the most important thing, the risk of life and safety of people, because we have a lot of people interacting with our systems and dependent on our systems, quite frankly, whether that's hospitals or data centers or wherever. And I think, Luke, from that perspective, again, coming back to the home, it's the most private of who we are. It's where we raise our children, and nobody wants that to be penetrated. So I think from all of us on the call, we build cybersecurity into our systems, and we make sure, back to the question of all the conversation on-premise versus cloud, how that whole chain is secured. So cybersecurity is extremely important for us as a company. Yes.
Fantastic, Richard.
Completely agree with what Nico and Gary have said, and I think one of the other things is that we need to look at is that if we look at our home, then clearly we need to be secure there. We need to feel safe in our homes. If we look at the cybersecurity, then if we think about the government sees this as an extremely important topic, right? So so there is a minimum cyber security standard. We have got a security policy framework to make sure that our cyber security is safe, and that's because that cyber security is important for our defence. It's important for our utilities. So cyber security, if somebody wants to get into cyber security, do they want to get into my home, or is it more, or would they perhaps want to get into the water network? Do they want to get into the wider electrical network? And it's really important that the cyber security protects those infrastructure systems. And if it protects those infrastructure systems and those standards are set, then those same standards will then apply to your commercial buildings and then into your home. So we can almost, I think, rest assured within our home that some of the technology standards that are having to apply upstream can actually be used right down to our home as well.
That's quite a good analogy you gave there of the hacking of the water networks. I think something like that happened in America about 3-4 years ago. I think it was the water networks, and billions of gallons was just released. I think it was just a proof that it could be done as opposed to any demand.
Yeah, that's all. Sometimes that's all hackers want to do, to prove that they can do it.
Yeah.
So I guess we all learn by experience, and that filters down through companies, etc., etc. We're kind of coming towards the end of the session. What I'm going to do is ask if there's any questions. We've had a couple which I've posed throughout the conversation, but I'll open that up to the chat from the public. And so while we've got you guys here, it's probably a really good time to see if you'll be able to answer any of those. So we'll give it a couple of minutes, see if anything comes through. So please do feel free to type in any messages. And if not, then I guess we will wrap this up. But I think it's been a very good discussion. I think we've covered everything that we're hoping to cover and more besides. So I think between the knowledge that you guys have presented, that should give a lot of confidence and clarity to some of the issues out there. I haven't had anything come through. So
somebody is typing.
Sorry, say again.
It looks like someone is typing. Thank you. Good discussion.
So thank you. Thank you.
Very
Good.
Excellent. Well, unless there's anything else, thank you so much for your time, and also to Voltimum for giving us this opportunity of this chat. And I'm sure everyone is contactable on the virtual fair today if you need to pose any additional questions to these guys. So it's been lovely chatting to you all, and look forward to catching up soon.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
James. Nice talking to you. Cheerio.
Bye.
Bye-bye.